I guess we are live now. So, hello, everybody. Welcome again to another brand new episode of the Ultimate Cloud Learning Show by K21 Academy. Today, we've got somebody whose domain is slightly different from what you usually have seen on our platform. So, it's a very refreshing new topic for you guys as well to actually come across something that's new and especially coming from someone who's very experienced in that particular field. So if you are someone who is interested in blockchain, Kubernetes, infrastructure management, please do make sure that you're here, that you're seated, and you're not missing out on any of the session because we'll have a whole itinerary of questions, which is really good and detailed in a way as well that even if you're a beginner, you'll get to learn quite a lot from our guest experience. So let me introduce our guest for the evening. Today we have Mark Thiele, and he's the CEO and founder of Edgevana, and he's got multiple years of experience in the field of blockchain, Kubernetes, and a lot more as well. So welcome again, Mark, and thank you very much for accepting our invite to come on to the Ultimate Cloud Learning Show.
Oh, Shivansh, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, same here. When I saw your profile as well, and I believe I've seen you on some sort of particular list about the cloud influences of the new era, and then I stumbled across your Twitter as well, and I really love the work that you're doing for the entire cloud community as well. So thank you very much. I believe on the behalf of the cloud community for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. No, I definitely enjoy my work, and I love the industry. And throughout my career, I've always participated in industry-oriented organizations. From an organization that my brother-in-law and I founded in 2008 called Data Center Pulse, to being a member of IBM's Cloud Minds, to being on the board of the Cloud Native Compute Foundation. Pick your poison. I've been involved in many of the biggest industry organizations and love doing that work and helping to spread the knowledge that I've gained over the last 35 years.
And we are surely very thank you for that. So we'll start from the very start. So you had quite elaborative career as of such, where you have just like you mentioned as well that you have kind of explored a lot of different things. So could you give us a little run through that as well?
As far as my career is concerned, what I've explored.
Yeah, the entire journey that you've had till now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My career in technology started in the late 80s, so it was a long time ago. Many of the people I work with today weren't even born when I first started working in technology, and it started by accident. I was doing a different job, and the lady that was the data center manager at the time, we called it a computer room, met me and was talking to me and said, "You should apply for a job with us." And at the time I said, I can't even, and the job in particular was a computer operator job. And I told her then, I said, I don't even know how to spell computer operator. Why would you want me to come work for you? And she says, well, we're looking for new people. We're happy to train. Just come give it a try. So I interviewed, I got the job, and that was in about 1987. And I've been in love with IT ever since. And I worked in a data center. And then I backtracked a little bit in the early 90s when HP bought our company, and basically went back to the beginning, learning everything I could about client server. Back then it was, PCs connected to a network connected to the data center called client server was what they called that environment at the time. And so I spent a year and a half building and rebuilding PCs and installing Windows and doing all that stuff that you do as in client server environments. And then I got a job as the help desk manager. And that turned into the help desk manager plus the PC support team. And then it turned into the, including the data center support team and then the web development team. And by the time I left HP in 2000, I had almost 400 people working for me, distributed across North America, Europe, and Asia. And then I jumped out into the startup world. I went in 2000, worst possible time, I joined a network startup company, and that lasted only about 10 months. And the bust in the market killed us. And here I was out of a job in the worst possible time in the market. the middle of middle of 2001.
Yeah.
After about 3 months, I found a great position at a biotech called Gilead, where I was able to build a global infrastructure team from scratch. There were just three of us, and the company scaled from 200 million in revenue to 2 billion in revenue over the course of the next 4 years. And my team was in a position to help them build the global infrastructure that they needed to support that. Everything from data centers to storage area network environments to virtualized applications to Citrix to standard client environments, Windows, Exchange, you name it. We did all of it. And from there, I spent some time at Brocade. Not a lot of time, but got to meet a number of great people, some of whom came and worked with me for the next several years at subsequent positions. I worked at VMware. I started there just before they went public and worked there for about 2.5 years. Built data center for them, streamlined their logistics for hardware acquisition, built an acquisitions team because they were buying a lot of small companies. And then in 2010, I joined a startup called Service Mesh, which was in the cloud management space. Spent about 1.5 years there before being recruited to a data center company called Switch. Spent almost 5 years there, helping to build the ecosystem and doing evangelism type work globally for them. And then in 2016, I joined a company called Apsera doing container management. And the container management environment got me more interested in edge and edge computing. And I can go into why that's true later on if you're interested. And after about 1.5 years there, Ericsson bought us. And at Ericsson, I was deeply involved in their edge strategy, the platforms, the operational requirements, use case development, things like that. But after about 2 years at Ericsson, I decided to move on and start my own company. And that's how I ended up with Edgevana. And my career path is somewhat odd in the sense that while I've been in IT the entire time and mostly been associated with infrastructure, I've also been a CIO, and I've had it's sort of an American saying, but I've been hip deep in cloud, in data center, and in infrastructure, and now in edge. Well, you only have 20 hips, but I've managed to be very, very involved in 4 major areas of technology, and now I'm getting really involved in a 5th, which is what you mentioned at the top of the show, the blockchain environment.
Yeah. So on that part as well. So could you tell us a little about blockchain as well? Because right now, whenever you listen to the word blockchain, you quickly kind of associate it with cryptocurrencies, and more or less that's where it is. It's primarily kind of associated with it, but I also watched a few videos, read a few articles, and blockchain is a lot bigger than just cryptocurrencies as a whole. So could you tell us a little about that as well?
And I think you started out with one of the most important points for people to remember, especially people that are just thinking about getting involved in blockchain, is blockchain and cryptocurrency go together, but they don't have to. Blockchain can solve problems for enterprises or even governments, and it doesn't have to be dependent on mining for a currency, right? That's not a minimum requirement. So before I go into a short description on what I see blockchain as doing, I want to talk for a couple of seconds about why many people believe blockchain is important. So today, if I want to perform a transaction, it generally speaking requires entry in somebody's database. If it requires entry in somebody's database, that means someone owns that environment and someone has access to that environment. They are in effect a middleman between me and my bank, me and the toll booth, me and exchanging goods, me and recording any of my other transactions. They are in effect a middleman between me and the goods or services that I'm trying to get in touch with. And that database is not only accessible, but by a particular person, but in theory, it's modifiable and controllable by a
Yeah.
single person or a single entity, right?
Okay.
So you don't have to think too hard to realize why that might be a problem, right?
Exactly.
That potentially controls pricing in ways that are not necessarily good for you. It potentially controls when and where you can access. It potentially controls the information about your transactions that you don't have control over. So I could go on, but the simple notion of of blockchain is to help to solve for some of those problems, to allow people to break away from the middleman in financial transactions, the middleman potentially in stock transactions, the middleman in making things happen in real time in edge environments, to streamline the cost, improve performance, and ensure that the transaction that occurs is distributed in an environment that is immutable, means it's not changeable. It's protected by virtue by a hash rate that makes hacking of that information extremely difficult. You can't just change it in one place because it's recorded in a large number of locations. So if you change it, even if you could be successful changing it on one server on a blockchain network, you'd have to go find all the other ones and change it there as well. Your ability to do that and not leave a footprint is almost impossible. So the blockchain really allows for us to take the middleman out of transactions, to create better security around the transactions that you do perform, allow you more control about how your information is stored and used. And frankly, I'm hoping over time that the blockchain will, in many ways, allow us to remove some of the manufactured mechanisms we use today, like a driver's license, like a passport, things like that, that can be faked or someone can steal, to remove those so that people can do transactions, they can travel, and their ID is guaranteed based on their blockchain use.
Okay. So as a whole, the identity theft cases are going to get reduced quite a lot with the use of blockchain.
Yes, I think so. The performance will be improved. The amount of things that everyone will be able to gain access to will improve. Think of potentially investing in companies that today are controlled by big banks. Think about using financial services without having to have $1 million in an account somewhere. These are all just among a few of the millions of potential opportunities that can be enabled via blockchain technology.
Okay. So how are you for the very first time, exposed to blockchain as a technology?
Yeah, it's really been about 4, maybe 5 years now, where I first started thinking about how and where blockchain might be of value in the enterprise or to individuals. And to be perfectly fair, at first I was very skeptical. And one of the most common questions people ask is, well, we could just use a database for that. There are even distributed databases. But the truth is that no matter what kind of database you use, if you are using a database that I have privilege to gain access to, I alone can affect what happens to you.
Yeah.
That's a risk, right? And so
Quite a big one.
I like the idea, just my own personal sentiment here, but I like the idea of democratizing how people gain access to services, how people gain access to investment, how people gain value from their own ID. And so because of those sentiments, I saw blockchain as having real potential.
Okay. Okay. So, Mark, you also are very much into Kubernetes as well. So, could you tell us like how is Kubernetes and blockchain interrelated?
Yeah, I mean, Kubernetes. So first of all, much of the blockchain work that I'm doing today, mostly with customers, not so much my blockchain, but with customers who have blockchains, revolve around blockchains that require a pretty high level of compute in order for transactions to occur, right? And for those transactions to be recorded, and for the network to be able to be supported effectively. So Kubernetes has not been a factor in those blockchain environments. Now, that's not to say that Kubernetes driving VMs or certainly driving containers can't eventually be a distributed capability for managing a blockchain. But another thing to keep in mind is that most publicly available blockchains now are designed around being open and designed around not necessarily being controlled by any individual. That's kind of the whole point that I was talking about, right?
Yeah.
So they're distributed. That being said, it doesn't mean Kubernetes can't come into play, but I'm not going to be able to give you a good answer for how much Kubernetes will be able to play with blockchain support in the near term, mainly because the majority of what I'm seeing is people are using bare metal to support their blockchain environments today. But again, that will likely change as blockchain variety improves, as the number of people on a blockchain increases. The potential opportunity to use capability that allows for wide scale distribution and orchestration on a platform like Kubernetes are likely going to become more and more important.
Okay, so what are the other key areas in terms of business or our daily life that blockchain do you think is going to get involved heavily in the future?
Yeah, I think over the next 4 to 5 years, what we're going to see is blockchain more and more, outside of the things that make the news today, right? What makes the news today is cryptocurrency and NFTs, et cetera, right? So beyond those things, regardless of what happens to those things, I think we're likely to see a huge acceleration in how people enjoy events, gain access to entertainment, travel, and do financial transactions. Those are the areas where I think we're likely to see the most impact from blockchain over the next 3 to 5 years. And that will all be related as well to your ability to be authenticated as who you are via the blockchain.
Okay, that's great. Guys, before I move on to the next question, if you guys have any questions for Mark, please do put them in the comment section of wherever you're watching, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. I'll pick them up as we go on, and we also have a dedicated section at the very end, so we'll pick some from there as well. We have gotten a few questions prior as well to the comments on the post, so we'll be picking them up as well as we go. So, Mark, you have been involved with Kubernetes as a technology as well for quite some time now, and you've seen it, grow, transform throughout the years. So, what has it been like for you, and could you give us a little insight as to what it was before and what it is today?
Yeah, interestingly enough, the technology around Kubernetes is newer than my interest in containers.
Oh.
Right. So Kubernetes has been around a while, but I got interested in containers in around 2014, and Kubernetes was still just a dream coming out of Google at the time. Kubernetes, the idea of Kubernetes and the framework for Kubernetes are largely designed around a solution that Google has historically called Borg. And that's what Borg is what Google uses to manage billions of containers that are started and stopped on a daily basis around the world. So I actually got involved in containers directly when I joined Apcera with a proprietary container management platform that was Apcera. So when I first started looking at Kubernetes, I actually hated it. I hated it because it was very, very limited in capability. It was extremely insecure. It was a toolkit that you or I would have to download and figure out how to build into something useful. And I hated it the most because it was free.
Yeah.
Right? Because what happened was that Kubernetes had the support for Google. Google's support was what really got the Cloud Native Compute Foundation going. And so that bully pulpit of Google, I'm not holding it against Google. Any company would have done the same thing had they had that technology in their hands. Meant that public mindshare around Kubernetes quickly grew far beyond our capacity at Apcera to gain customers on our platform, right? Luckily, Ericsson bought us, et cetera. But since then, I'm not going to hold a grudge. Technology is technology, and it does what it does based on consumption, and that's what's most important. And Kubernetes has morphed into a solution that, depending on where you get it and how you implement it, offers an incredible platform of capability for its customers. And I think, and whether you end up doing this on Kubernetes or find an alternative way to do it, I think isn't so important as that Kubernetes as a technology management capability or strategy offers the consumer the ability to design applications that can fit in a much wider range of use cases, right? Okay. And so a simple example would be that if I've got 10 servers and 1,000 VMs or 100 VMs that support my ERP system, that's fine if I have 2,000 people in the company that are in that ERP system all day long. It's not hugely efficient, but it's efficient enough. But what if instead of 2,000 people gaining access to it, what if what I really needed was 200 million people gaining access to some function for just a few seconds, right? So the difference in efficiency there is that I could design that same environment to support 2 million people, where that environment would only support 2,000 people before, because I can use containers and Kubernetes orchestration and provide access to portions of an application in bite-sized chunks that allows for much more efficient use of the infrastructure and, frankly, better performance for the customer, right? So another example, have you ever used Gmail?
Yeah. Obviously.
So, and don't take my word for it. I'm making an assumption here based on my knowledge of Google. I could be wrong today. They could have changed everything from when I first learned of containers. But if you look at Gmail, Gmail isn't a VM. It isn't a server. It isn't a container for Shivansh, right?
Yeah.
It's a multitude of containers that provide you a service based on when you click on them.
Yeah.
The benefit of the container is that if you've never started up a VM, it's almost like starting up a server. It's not quite that slow, but it takes a few seconds. And if you were to click on your Google Hangouts button and it had to start up a VM, you'd quickly stop using Google Hangouts because it would take many seconds to load that link. But because Google Hangouts is actually created in a container for you, it looks like it's instant because it spins up that container. So you can see where that would be much more efficient use. And so that's where Kubernetes really drives a significant amount of value for those organizations that have the skill sets to build and design applications that are considered more cloud native.
Okay. So I have a follow-up question to that as well. Last week we had Subhashish Ghosh, who's a cloud solutions architect at Microsoft right now, and he picked up a very important point about softwares and in general things, technology. As to a major portion of it is about how it impacts the business. So how do you think Kubernetes have impacted the industry or the business throughout the years it's been there?
Yeah. For the this is not necessarily a hugely positive comment, but I think mainly because we're still very early. Realistically, we're still very early in the adoption and maturity of Kubernetes in the enterprise. And one of the most common problems in most of the world for enterprises working with Kubernetes is the difficulty in finding skilled help to develop around the use of Kubernetes. Whether you're developing an application that can leverage Kubernetes, or you're actually developing and managing your Kubernetes environment, that's a hard place to find talent right now, because many of the largest companies or the largest cloud providers are sucking up that talent as fast as you can create it, right? That being said, for those companies who have leveraged literally real-time support for how their applications interact with customers, tools like processes like DevOps, more modular code, running on functions as a service, using containers and/or Kubernetes, means that you can literally be talking to a customer who's your online customer as they are experiencing a problem with your application, and you can release code that can solve that problem.
Yeah.
Right. You can do that much in the way of being responsive. And so if you've built an organization to successfully leverage that kind of capability, then your customer engagement opportunity potentially goes way higher, and your ability to leverage just-in-time information that might change how your product is viewed, how it's sold, how many customers are interested in it, means that you can release code by the hour, by the day, whatever, instead of how when I was younger, when we made an update to Oracle or SAP or whatever it was once every month or once every 3 months.
Yeah.
So if a customer had a real problem with how part of the application was working, they might have to wait weeks before something was changed, and they saw the benefit of that either as an end user inside the company or as a customer using the company's website, right? So Kubernetes, for those companies that have been able to really leverage it in that way, offers a huge potential improvement in customers' success and in the ability to differentiate your business from your competitors by releasing updates and changes more quickly.
So can we look at this situation in a way that there is a huge demand in terms of talent, but the supply is not as much up to the mark as the demand is right now?
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. Are you asking for how we might solve that, or?
No, right now the situation that's prevailing right now with Kubernetes,
Yep.
there's a huge demand for talented or kind of coders out there for Kubernetes, but the supply is not kind of fulfilling that demand as such.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I mean, that is exactly right.
Okay.
The large organizations like the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the big banks, whatever, can afford to pay people because of the scale of the benefit of their work. They can afford to pay them salaries that are 2 or 3 times what the average, small to mid-sized enterprise could afford to pay.
So I believe it's a very obvious question that arises right now. If there is that money, so why is it a problem right now? Why are people not able to kind of get skilled enough to be able to get to that level that is required right now, according to you? And how can they do it?
Yeah, I mean, why are some people still coding in COBOL? Why do some people prefer C++ versus Go? Right?
Yeah.
Many people do what they do because that's what they're comfortable with and that's what they like. So just saying we need more Kubernetes coders or designers or security staff doesn't necessarily make it happen. There have to be people that are interested in that kind of work. And Kubernetes is, so many of the coders that I've worked with throughout my career they're as much technicians as they are artists.
Yeah.
Right. And so
100%.
Why does an engineer never believe their product is ready? Because they want to do that one more thing to it, right? And they want, just like a good chef wants to see their customer enjoy their food, a developer wants to see something that the customer enjoys using, right? And solves a problem that gets some level of exposure. So the difference between coding for Kubernetes and coding for an externally facing application is that if you're coding for Kubernetes, it will likely guarantee you a good job, but it doesn't create the kind of job that gives you that as much external satisfaction that, oh, the company sold more product because of what I did on the website, or the CEO really loves this software because of what I designed into it. Nobody sees it. It's the plumbing.
Yeah.
Right. And there's only a certain segment of people that really want to get involved in the plumbing. And the same thing is true for another part of my career that is still the love of my life, and that's the data center space. Right. You could ask the same question. There are great jobs doing operations in data centers, designing air conditioning and electrical layouts, finding more efficient ways to do infrastructure designs. But there's only a certain type of person who wants to be immersed in that part of the technology stack instead of being the more glamorous where I can be in my room coding away and I can create something beautiful that the world will see. Those are two very different spectrums.
Yeah. Okay. I 100% like. It kind of takes me back as well, where you mentioned that the coders in general are not just coders, but they're also like very an artist in a way as well. Because
Right.
back in the day when I was an engineer in college, we also used to talk about that an engineer is a true engineer if he's innovative. That's one word that needs to be there if you aspire to become an engineer as a whole as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Anybody can repeat something that somebody wrote, but it
Exactly.
takes an artist to
Exactly.
write something new that people will enjoy. That's right.
Yeah, definitely. I believe like I'll add one thing to that as well, that initially there were not as many resources out there as well as to get yourself trained individually without actually going to a proper physical academy. With the
Yeah.
new kind of technology or ed space boom that has been there because of COVID, there are a lot of online platforms out there, just like K21 Academy as well, which are offering online courses, maybe short-term, long-term courses with actual hands-on labs and capstone projects that are giving you a platform to not just learn but also, just like you mentioned, innovate and try out new things to build your skill set in that particular space as well.
Right. Right. No, I totally agree. And compared to when I was coming up in the industry, the availability of online training and information around work in the technology space it's so much more accessible, right? And so that work that you guys are doing and other companies are doing is incredibly important. And if I could leave just kind of a last thought is that to your question about why aren't there more people in the Kubernetes space? Part of it is because the industry has adopted Kubernetes in such a large way so quickly that the skill sets haven't kept up. The other part of it is that as we already talked about, but I would urge people that aren't in technology today or are thinking about a career change to realize that if they don't think they're the best coder in the world, if they don't think they're ever going to be the Michelangelo of their engineering department, writing code, there are, or if they're just getting out of school and they don't want to learn to code, but they want to get into IT, I urge you to take a look at the opportunities that are available, because there are many areas of the data center world and the infrastructure world where even somebody with a typical high school diploma, but who's willing to go out and get a few certifications, can make real money and provide real value to their companies. And once they're in these roles, their future is now up to them.
Yeah.
But if they don't break in somewhere, then they'll always be looking through the window from the outside.
Definitely. Guys, whoever is watching, if you are interested in learning Docker and Kubernetes, or just take your first step into it as well, make sure you go and check out our free class on Docker and Kubernetes. It has a live kind of demo as well. And there's a lot of other very introductory stuff for you as well. So make sure you check it out. It's an absolute free class as well. The link will be in the comment section as well. So moving on to the next part, Mark, let's talk a little about the current as well. So you also co-founded and you're currently the CEO of Edgevana as well. So tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So my thinking around building Edgevana, my co-founder and I thinking about building Edgevana was really around the notion that we're in the phases of a rapid increase in the impact and use of technology on society, right?
Okay.
And for an old guy like me, thinking about how much technology is in use today, you would think, how could you possibly think we need more compared to how much we had in, say, 1990 or 1980, right? But the reality is that 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, these were the Stone Ages.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
Literally. It sounds stupid, but 10 years from now, we will look back and go, I don't know how those people survived with that crappy technology. No different than if you were to look back right now and you looked at an old Palm Pilot handheld device, you'd go, Jesus, I don't know how people worked on those things.
Yeah.
Right. the insinuation of technology into our daily lives will probably take, a 10 or 20 fold increase between now and 2030, 2031. And so what does that mean? Well, at the enterprise level, it means more technology adoption, a much higher chance that technology will make changes in an organization in a number of ways. One is a higher level of automation, more impact on efficiency and supply chain. Technology will be a greater portion of their cost of goods sold, right?
Okay.
Well, just a quick side note on that. What do companies most worry about when they sell a product? What are my margins? Well, today, if the cost of selling your product is this, technology is somewhere around here.
Yeah.
Right? Because your technology is just keeping the lights on for most companies, serving a website, right? But it's not a huge part of how your product is engaged with the customer and how you make it, how you sell it, right? It's just a front end. What happens when technology becomes more like this, 30 or 40% of your cost of goods sold? Now, every enterprise, every CEO will be forced to look at technology and go, what do we need to do to more effectively own and operate our technology? Right? So you're going to see a lot more technology, but you're going to see a lot of new choices made by enterprises about, should I go cloud? Should I not go cloud? How important is staying hybrid? Should I take some of my globally distributed apps and put them on cloud, but keep some of my other core apps in-house? A lot of those questions will take on a much higher level of urgency as more companies digitally transform. Now, I'm also thinking about edge, edge computing. Of course, we talked about blockchain already.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking edge computing, not only does it create a significant number of new application opportunities for services at the edge, for engagement at the edge, for health and safety at the edge, for factory efficiency improvement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But historically, and again, as people digitally transform, one of the things they're looking for is not just efficiency, not just making a better product, but over 50% over 50% of the activities associated with digital transformation have a direct correlation with how that customer engages with their customer or improves the customer's experience with them, right?
Yeah.
So historically, what have we used for gaining access to the customer? A flat website, a phone tree, which nobody likes, right? Email, which people hate even more, right? Yeah. Edge computing creates an opportunity for the company to reach out and shake your hand.
Yeah.
Reach out in a positive way, put their arm around you, get you more engaged with what they're doing, potentially even make you part of their product development, et cetera, create experiences for you that you can enjoy more effectively where you are, where you're using their product. So when you take those into account and you take a blockchain into account, I believe you can't help but accept that our technology footprint is going to change in the sense that it's going to be more distributed and not necessarily, it's not like the center is going to shrink, but there are going to be more use cases that are less reliant on the center and more reliant on being supported at the edge. And so all of those things led me to believe that the demand for complex global IT environments was going to increase.
Okay.
And I wanted to make it easier, whether you were supporting your global blockchain or distributing an edge environment for the consumers of your stores, or putting real-time compute on your factory floor or whatever. I wanted to be able to help customers to be able to do that in a way that not only de-risks it, but improves their time to value and allows them to approach the market the way they want to, not making historical assumptions about, well, I have to use company A or I have to use company B because no one else can do this for me, and give them more flexibility. Effectively, I don't know how successful a saying it is, but I like to say I want to help customers create best fit solutions for them, not compromises. And
Okay.
the vast majority of my IT career, it's very rare where I had a solution where there wasn't a compromise.
Yeah.
There weren't as many servers as I would have liked. The servers weren't in as many places as I would have liked. I didn't have as much network as I needed. I couldn't include all the customers because in some places there weren't quite enough customers to justify the spend. Pick your poison. But I was always making compromises. And I want to help people do what they want to do globally with technology without having to compromise.
Okay, that's great, and I wish you all the very best with Edgevana as well. I mean,
Thank you.
it sounds
Thank
like a
you.
great idea as well. So, on the talks of future as well. So, what do you think is the future of cloud computing in general? And I know it's gonna become big. It is the next big thing, and everybody also already gotten that idea as well. And at the rate it's progressing. So, what do you think the future holds for cloud computing as well? And how can someone benefit from this as well?
Yeah, I mean, uh, there's so many ways to look at this. I mean, I could have spent the whole 45 minutes just answering this one question, right? But I'll try to make some short comments on it. First of all, cloud computing will continue to grow, and it's likely to continue to grow at a compound annual rate between now and the end of the decade of somewhere between 18 and 25% as a whole market. Certain companies will grow at higher rates, certain companies will grow at lower rates, but as a whole market, somewhere between 18 and 25%. So that's an indicator for investment. That's an indicator for looking for a job. That's an indicator as to the potential capabilities of cloud supporting your business needs, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're a few years away from cloud becoming more of a true commodity, right?
Okay.
When you think about a piece of hardware in a data center, you could say it's commoditized. But to me, when cloud is really commoditized will be when a customer can leverage resources wherever they are, whoever they're provisioned by, in a commoditized way. Same format, same APIs, same workload design. But today, if I have a single application and I want to put it and I want to use the services of Amazon's cloud, and I want to use the services of Google Cloud, and I want to use the services of Azure Cloud, et cetera, I've got to design for each of those cloud environments. Different APIs, different services, different service capabilities, different protection strategies, different security, potentially different release to production strategies, all of those things. And so, my hope for the work around multi-cloud and hybrid cloud is that much of that layer that causes headaches for enterprises and people that used to do my job running infrastructure for companies is simplified, and it allows people to really leverage resources more efficiently. Because as much as I don't believe cloud solves everything for an enterprise, it's not always cheaper. It's not always more secure. It's not always almost anything. Cloud does offer some benefits that are impossible to argue with. If you don't have the hardware today and you want to roll out a new application or an idea, you can start doing it tomorrow on a cloud.
Yeah.
And if it gains interest in the market, you can scale it the next day in the cloud. You can't do that at home. If you're a relatively small enterprise and you've got one of your own data centers, even two of your own data centers, but you need to release an application that's going to be used by your employees or customers around the world, you can't effectively or efficiently take 2 or 3 servers worth of application and put it in 50 places and manage it. That's really hard. That's one of the things we're hoping to help people solve for at some level, but that's really hard, right? So that's where, even if it might be more expensive per transaction on the cloud, your ability to deploy that at an earlier stage and get that global visibility makes cloud really ideal. Some of the platforms that are offered in cloud today are really difficult for the average enterprise to enable. Things like BigQuery, things like distributed databases, things like AI services. Those are still, relatively speaking, hard for the average enterprise to adopt. But with cloud, you could go in and code against it and begin using their tools the next day, right? In theory. So cloud is here to stay. I believe edge is going to be an enormous portion. In fact, edge may in fact be bigger than public cloud before the end of the decade. But that's because edge is distributed access to compute that will directly impact literally every single consumer in the world, every storefront, every building, every roadway, every car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the sheer scale of edge will be larger than the scale of cloud computing, but in most cases, it's more likely to add value to the cloud rather than take away from it. So both of them have significant synergies and will continue to grow for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. I believe one thing that we are going to get out of this session, if we have to look at one thing, is that we need to give, there should be a little more attention towards edge computing now, as well as compared to what it is right now.
Agreed.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much, Mark, for joining in. It was an incredible session. I'm pretty sure there was a few myths about blockchain that were out there. We kind of busted those as well, and we kind of understood the origins of Kubernetes and how to make it big as well. And also, I believe one of the biggest things that we today discovered on the Ultimate Cloud Learning Show is that there are a lot of tech jobs that we are not kind of giving attention to because it just doesn't put in the frame of what a tech job is supposed to be like. So we need to, kind of, as people who are looking to get a job in the cloud computing, we need to, open our eyes up to new opportunities and different areas which are overlooked and which has a lot of opportunities on that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
Okay, guys, for watching us, please go check out Mark, especially on Twitter as well, because I kind of loved the kind of help and support he's putting out for the community as well. So make sure you check him out as well. And if you're coming here from Mark's side, make sure you check us out at K21 Academy as well. And thank you very much, Mark, for joining in. Any last, key pieces of wisdom or advice or any of that sort that you want to end this show on?
Last piece of advice is that the job market from a technology standpoint is a buffet.
Yeah,
and don't make the mistake of staying only where the crab legs are or where the lamb korma is. Go out and try the other items in the buffet that you're not as comfortable with, because your career will benefit from it and your job satisfaction will benefit from it in the long term.
Definitely. Thank you very much again, Mark. And again, guys, I'll see you guys again next week, probably on Saturday again. We've got another guest lined up for you guys, somebody who's on the lines of DevOps as well, somebody quite, again, very active in the community. So I'll see you guys again. So make sure you follow K21 Academy on all the different platforms, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, whichever you are on, and maybe on Instagram as well. And I'll see you guys again next week. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Take care.